What do y'all know about the Mongols? A large empire. Okay, very good. What else? They did attack the Chinese, a lot of other people than the Chinese. Once the Chinese built a wall, so therefore the horses couldn't get over the wall, then they focused their efforts toward the riches of the West and moved in. We kind of talked about it a little bit the other day about the idea of the bubonic plague and how the Mongols brought it, and some of those things. But the idea that they were a big horde of people that rode on horses and stormed through things. All right, what else? What else do you know about the Mongols? Mongols. Okay, we saw that on the video that was there. What did it say? Like 0.002% of the world's DNA is populated with Genghis Khan's DNA, like they're descendant of Genghis Khan, because of the idea 1 in 10, 200. There we go. So you get 0.02. All right, good. So the idea of Genghis Khan pillaging all of the countryside, to the idea to leave on his legacy. Yes. Okay, pretty much to be able to get through back from one place to the other. The idea of transporting. All right, what else? Let's think of this. How did the Mongols originally live? Were they hunters and gatherers? Were they herders? Were they farmers? What were they? Okay, hunters and gatherers, kinda. Well, I guess you could say the same thing with hunters and gatherers as you could with shepherds. Okay, they were nomadic. They moved from place to place to place. All right. What changed the way that warfare was based upon them having a horse? Okay. So we go back to what Nolan was saying was, normally there's a marching army. It takes a long time to get to where it's going to go. All right. So you have plenty of time to warn others that are in the wake of and say, like, hey, we need to move when you get out of the way. Or they can continue to go back and back and back and back until they have enough people to fight against the army that's there. But if all of a sudden this horde of Mongols are invading on top of you right there, you don't have any chance to react. You don't have any chance to put anything together. You don't have a chance to hide the women and children. Most of the time, you're just in the wake of rather than being able to defend yourself. So it's kind of a scary thought of, how much, pillage that they did leave because no one was able to defend themselves. What do most people do with a bully? Uh-huh. What's that? Most people run away. Most people kind of give into, you know what I mean? I mean, for the majority of people, you think about your little kid and the bully comes along. Some people are going to turn around and pop them in the nose. Some people are going to be, the one that starts crying and gives them whatever they want. Some people is going to go run and tell somebody else. There's kind of three types of people that it's going to happen to. The Mongols were such a dominant force that when they basically bullied everybody all the way through there, those other people cowered down and gave whatever it was that the Mongols needed, and kind of helped the empire to grow. On the big part that we're talking about is Russia and what would become Russia. So Kiev was the main place for Russia. It was the capital city. The Mongols are going to end up going into Kiev around 1240 and basically demolishing it. All right. And that's going to force Russia to have to go underneath the rule of. They went through years and times of going through the plains, moving westward. There was a quote that it said, after the Mongols had left, there was no one left to weep. So what does that mean? Killed every single thing that was there. Women, children, elderly, warriors, all the above. They killed everything that was there. So even if you were someone who had your family members killed, you weren't even able to cry and weep about it because they killed you also. And that was kind of the end of it right there. Um, the other part was the vast number of people that were murdered by the Mongols. They were viewed as very, very barbaric, but that was their way of life. That was how they won. That was what, the times of history was like. It said 5 years later that one of the priests that came through an area that was conquered by the Mongols, and the whole area had never recovered, had never moved, had never did anything different. It was still full of skeletons and skulls of all the warriors that the Mongols had just crashed through and killed. So it was pretty crazy. It says in the middle of the 1200s, a ferocious group of horsemen from Central Asia slashed their way into Russia. These nomads were the Mongols. They exploded onto the world scene at the beginning of the 1200s under a man named Genghis Khan, one of the most feared warriors of all time. The Mongols may have been forced to move out by economic or military pressures. They may have been lured by the wealth of the cities to the west. Remember China, they wanted to eat, essentially. That was their grain, that was their trade supply. Again, whenever China builds a wall, they want to get through. They can't get into India because there's the Himalayas. There's a natural barrier, so therefore they're protected, or else the Mongols would have taken control of them. So their only next place was to go west toward Europe that's there. It says they rode their horses swiftly across the steppes of Asia and into Europe. They savage killing and burning won them a reputation of brutality. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, his successors continued conquering. His successors were his sons, his grandsons, a continuation of the Khans that were there. Their empire would stretch all the way from the Black Sea to the center of China, south to India, north upward through Russia. So they had this huge, huge empire that they had collected because they had continued, to beat and battle and kill people. It says they attacked Kiev under the reign of the leadership of Batu Khan, Genghis's grandson. So many inhabitants were slaughtered. We talked about the idea of no one able to weep. 5 years later, all the bones that were laying there. It says Mongols ruled Russia for 200 years, and they were known as the Khanate of the Golden Horde, which means the kingdom. Gold was, of course, just like it is today, a sense of power. Okay, kind of like purple and gold were the main colors. All right. So one of the big things that we talked about with like Islam and Muslim, once they took over people, what did they allow the people to do if they paid a tax? Choose what religion. Basically, live your own life and stay normal, but you're under our rule as long as you pay this tax. The Mongols took the same idea that as long as you paid a tax, basically we're getting paid to bully people. As long as you pay your tax, we'll let you live. You're still underneath the Mongol protection. Nobody's going to mess with you, but you can promise that you will never, ever try to revolt. So you got to do two things. You got to pay a tax, and you got to swear to never revolt, or else you die. Okay? When it came down time to actually revolt against the Mongols and go to Russian rule, other Russian leaders and even church officials would turn in those people to the Mongols that were going to try to revolt. They would turn in their own fellow countrymen, and then the Mongols would come in and kill them, and then they would be repaid, rewarded, and given a higher position in rank that was there. So basically, they got the Russians to flip on each other. So they were the rats. So then that way the Mongols could come in and take care of them and not have to worry about them ever actually trying to revolt. Yes, sir. To snitch on their own countrymen. But it helped them out because the Mongols grew them higher in the pecking order. Like, can't beat them, join them. So they fully committed to joining the Mongols, even if it was the cost of their own countrymen to go down. It's kind of a sorry state, but that's what it was. It profited them. Okay. So for years and years and years, any revolt, any uprising, anything to try to get the Russians out from underneath the Mongol net was squished down until the guy called Ivan III. Ivan III comes in, and they're going to have a battle with the Mongols. March 150 miles from Kiev, the Mongols meet them there. They're at this battle. They continually fight and fight and fight. but nobody's able to push forward this way or push forward this way to continue on to the capital city or for the Russians to be able to win. And the war or battle is equal to a tie. They both go home in both directions. Who's the winner in that one, Russia or the Mongols? Okay. How many think Russia? How many think the Mongols? Okay. The answer is Russia, because even though they didn't win, they were the first people under Ivan III that weren't crying because all of their warriors were dead, or didn't have their bodies laying on the ground because all of the warriors had already killed all of their warriors. So therefore, a tie was a win because they had been beaten for so long. Does that make sense? All right. Sometimes you don't always win that first battle, but if you tie it, then you have the confidence to be able to go back in and win the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Well, whenever they did tie with the Mongols, that brought up a lot of other people to be like, wait a minute, if Ivan III can do it, let's get behind this dude. So Russians get behind him, Russians get behind him, other Russians get behind him. And next thing you know, they have a vast enough army to actually compete with the Mongols, actually drive the Mongols back out and actually take over Russia again, based upon that catapultness of being able to have that one draw. Therefore, then they would rebuild the capital city. It would be known as Moscow, okay, which is a big, big city even today, on very important trade and everything else that goes along with it. So that's just kind of a touch base of the Mongols. We'll get into them a lot more in chapter 12, and then kind of a little bit of introduction of how the Russians were introduced, because they survived the Mongols, or else they probably wouldn't have become the Russians. What I need you to do now is I need you to go to announcements on Canvas. And when you go to announcements, there will be an announcement that says, like, chapter 11, there'll be 4 deals. One will say chapter 11 PowerPoint, one will say chapter in the brief, and it'll say section 1, 2, and 3. All I need you to do is chapter 11 quiz on that announcement. You'll answer questions 1 through 10. Some of these will have gone over, some of them we haven't from today's deal, because you need to look through the PowerPoint, you need to look through the class discussion part of it, you need to look through the chapter in the brief. But on a separate sheet of paper, write down the letter and the word answer for 1 through 10 on chapter 11, section 2. Okay, click on the one, it'll open up a link for chapter 11, section 2. You'll turn that in the box. If you're at home, you'll take a picture of it and send it to me on email. You'll be good to go. Anybody have any questions? All right, get after it. It's under announcements. Should be the very top one.